perspective. A guy wrote this article, and it'll give you an answer why certain types of non-Jewish music are very bad. And for this you'll understand more, and we'll expand a little bit. David Merrill, a 16-year-old Ansmont River High School student, whose high school science experiment supports what parents have been saying for years, that hard rock and roll, taints the brain, or at least the brains of mice. Using 72 male laboratory mice, a stopwatch, a 5 by 3 foot maze, and the music of Mozart and Anthrax. I assume that Anthrax is a rock and roll glacier band. Those that will know, will know. That's a Mozart is a classical music. David worked with an Old Dominion University statistician, someone that does statistics, and to establish that hard rock impedes learning. This is an actual scientific study that he did. In the process, he captured top honors, regional and state science fairs, and earned accolades from the Navy and the CIA. This is what he goes. To prove his point, David assembled, this happened in 1997, 23 years ago. Try it yourself if your mother lets you bring mice into your house. David assembled 3 separate groups of 24 mice. A control group, a hard rock group, and a classical group. To ensure scientific validity, that it should all be staff design and no questions, each white mouse weighed between 15 and 20 grams, was 4 to 6 weeks old, and was bred to ensure no genetic abnormalities existed. And they were all basically the same type of mouse, all healthy the same kind of way. 72 mouse divided into 3 groups, 24, 24, and 24. The mice spent the first week using their controlled environment in David's parents' basement. They received measured feedings and 12 hours of light each day. They were all treated the same amount of food, same amount of light. And there was a map, there was a maze. He built a maze, a big box, 5 by 3 feet, put stuff inside it, and he put the mouse in the beginning, and I had to try to figure his way out. Each mouse navigated the maze to establish the base time of about 10 minutes. So all 72 mice, now it takes them 10 minutes to get from entering the maze till leaving the maze. Then David started piping in music 10 hours a day, different to the 3 different groups. The control group navigated without music. He put, so the 2 other groups, one was classical music, one was hard rock and roll, and one was no music at all, and then they went through the maze. He put each mouse through the maze 3 times a week for 3 weeks. So the first week it was time to learn, and they established 10 minutes, and then over the next few weeks, for the next 3 weeks, he had each one going 3 times a week, some of them that had music the whole time. The results. The control group shaved 5 minutes from its original time. It means the group without any music, that like Hatila took them 10 minutes, now that they were listening to music, they were able to do it in only 5 minutes. They became smarter and smarter over time to get out the Bapashas. If you know exactly what you're doing, it probably taking 20 seconds. But since he was part of the maze, so he learned it took them 5 minutes. The mice that navigated the maze with Mozart knocked 8.5 minutes off their time. So classical music helped them to finish it in 1.5 minutes. They finished the whole thing. But the group listening to hard rock bumped through the maze, dazzled and confused, taking an average of 30 minutes, tripling the amount of time it previously took to complete the maze. This is the best is still to come. First, he points out, most noticeably, the hard rock mice didn't sniff the ear to find the trails of others that came before them. We know that animals have a good sense of smell. So the most natural thing for an animal to try to figure out how to go is to smell. So besides the fact that it wasn't remembering itself, but basic, how to do things for a mouse, this is basic. To follow smells, even that it didn't do. It's not the worst part, the best part. How can I look at it? David said it was like the music dulled their senses. It showed point blank that hard rock has a negative effect all around. I cannot think of a positive effect that hard rock has on learning. In fact, David thinks the negative effects go well beyond learning. And here's the punchline. For me, it's the punchline. During the 4-month experiment, David housed each mouse in separate aquariums. Aquariums are basically a cage. Each individual mouse, 72 little boxes of mice. That's because last year, for a similar project, he kept all the hard rock mice together, all the classical mice together, and the control mice together. So why didn't do this time around? The results were horrific. I had to cut my project short because all the hard rock mice killed each other. None of the classical mice did that at all. All right? Scientific experiment from a good. So here we see very clearly, there's many articles like this, but this is mamish prati, that music that's wild and wild can actually change a person with seichel and midas. Messes up the seichel, and seichel guf is different defanim. Side what he has loses, and side basically things that gets worse and worse. And midas, we can see what happens, that it becomes terrible. I have a relative of mine that went OTD for a little bit off the derech, Baruch Hashem came from again, and he told my family, what took me off the derech was Goyish music. So in this story, the classical music is kiviyachol better. Now there's a whole shaila amongst the Chassidish Chevra, those that appreciate music, is classical music okay or not? We're not going there, because the Baruch is asking about non-Jewish music with derech klal, not asking about classical music. The Baruch had the questions about rock and roll and the Goyish bands, v'chulu. So clearly, the whole style of this kind of music is very bad for the person. This is partially from a Goyish perspective completely. Now, the we have sources from Sichos and the Rebbe explaining how music can touch the nefesh, and just like we see in this mashal that the classical music made them smarter, so to speak. So the Havdalah it's understood that Nigunim, coming from the Rebbeim, can make a person more able. Besides making him smarter, making him more able. And there's many other scientific experiments also about growing plants. Growing plants, they did the same thing. They had different plants and they blasted music at it for 3 months straight. And then also the ones that had hard rock and roll music, they ended up wilting away and dying. The ones that were the ones that had the more edel music ended up thriving on it. So some of these experiments can be argued with, but I think this one is pretty much strongly bound. It's pretty much strong. Yeah.
Yeah, but mice before the experiment, none of the mice had a preference in genres of music. People listening to music, they might already have an appreciation for rock and roll and appreciation.
How could you have that appreciation before you're born? The mice didn't have it either. And obviously, of course, the person that listens to Goyish music at this point, he obviously likes it. But we're saying that the music has an effect on the nefesh, seichel and midas. It messes up his seichel, messes up his midas. So Goyish music from a Goyish person has an effect on the nefesh. So this is an example of only Gashmis seichel, Gashmis midas. Pashut, they were less smart and less nice. But Beruchnis, you dull your sensitivity to Yiddishkeit. When a person listens to non-Jewish music, he becomes less of a feeling for Yiddishkeit, for Siddishkeit, and that's why it is a terrible thing for a person to listen to non-Jewish music.
This experiment was about music in general, not just Jewish music. Because you said that they had also classical music. So it wasn't just rock. What about Jewish rock and roll?
It's based on the same thing.
It's basically just it's about
bringing out that wilde music has a terrible effect. Most Goyish music is wilde. It's a terrible effect. It's very bad. I say that once in a blue moon, a person hears something, he's not going to mess up his life. But Beifim Kavua, huh?
You go to Walmart once, you're not going to come like that.
All right. Next question: should you skip karbonos to be with the minyan? So there's a famous letter of the Rebbe where the Rebbe tells people that. The Rebbe writes to someone that even though in Shulchan Aruch there are halachas about skipping not only karbonos, skipping psukkah dezimna, skipping Mevar Chamasham Yishtabach, there are halachas like that, but the Rebbe says not to learn those halachas with Bachrim. And the Rebbe explains why. The Rebbe says because when Bachrim grow up learning this way, that you can skip the karbonos and skip parts of davening, they end up feeling that these parts are not as important. And if they feel that it's not as important, then even when they will be on time and they won't need to skip, they also won't care about that. There was a big chassid, Berke Chen. Berke Chen was a malamed in Kfar Chabad. So when he would daven with first grade, second grade, he taught them. I heard that he had a rotation every day. He would daven a different part of davening. Some days was Reinim Bekabel, and then Kedas Yitzchak. The next days from Lo'elu B'Yodam till Chves Kadesh Me'Barabim. Every day he did a few. But the kids got to it. They realized they can't daven the whole davening, but he never made them feel that this part is more important than the other part. Every day was different parts. And they grew older. They understood that every part of davening is very important. There's I'm on a chat with a whole bunch of teachers, and there's a guy, I think his name is Rabbi Chai Cohen. Anyone from Toronto over here? Yeah, Rabbi Chai Cohen, such a person. So he writes that years ago, about 20 years ago, he met a Litvish guy in a shul, and the Litvish guy told Rabbi Chai Cohen that he saw this letter of the Rebbe, and he thinks that it's Haytachin. How can the Rebbe go and say not to learn the Siman in Shulchan Aruch? How can I do such a thing? How can you say that the Shulchan Aruch says to skip, and you tell him to skip those halach? Haytachin. So I don't know what Rabbi Cohen, I'll answer him on the spot, but he told him that many years later, this Rav met Rabbi Cohen again, and he told him, I understand your Rebbe very well. I'm a Rav in the shul, and have Balabatim come to shul, and they don't take Karbanis. They have time, and they should start straight from Haidu, or whatever it's Ashkenaz. They don't take Karbanis. Why? Because they got used to the fact that these parts of davening are not as important. So Mamela, if a person that's older, so he's already established that he knows that from every single word is 100% important. Such a person comes late to shul once in a while. No, you can't tell him. Sometimes you'll allow him to skip certain parts of davening, and he'll allow himself so because he knows he's going to be mashkin afterwards, and he's not going to skip it at all. But for Abacha, until you have it strongly established within your system, which if you're only 18, 17, or whatever, even 20, it's still not mabish in your system enough, so you should never skip. The Neisiv calls the davening is a certain seder. It's a famous dream of Yaakov Avinu, the 4 rungs of the ladder. There's a proper seder. You can't just jump to the 3rd rung and go to the 2nd one afterwards. There's a proper seder how to do it. So therefore, you should not be skipping. You should say it in the right order. Next question: why don't we daven in a language we understand, English, if it is way more practical? So, this is according to Shulchan Aruch again. It says clearly, "Yochel ispalel b'chol lashon sheyirtza." A person can daven in any language, and he says, "V'hani mili b'tzibur." So I'm going to read from you from this sefer over here. Like I said today, we're going to spend more time in each question. There's still 2 more left. This sefer is called Piskei Tshuvos. This is a sefer I recommend every bacher to buy for himself. It's a set of 6 volumes, or maybe 7 already by now. I'm not sure. And basically, it goes through every simon in Shulchan Aruch. And any modern, contemporary question which comes up today, older questions, he addresses almost every question out there, and he brings all the tshuvos, and he brings whatever people discuss. And he brings the Rebbe, he brings Sefer Menhagim, Sharei Halacha Minig, and he brings everything all the time. And he's Bechol, so you don't pass him by him, but he brings you all the Ma'arim HaKemis in every topic. In the back, he has a great mafteach, a great index. So any question you want, if you know how to learn, you use an index. But he has a whole bunch of indexes. It's one of the best books out there for Halacha today, for Eirach Chaim. He has a son-in-law that put together, we have it over there on the shelf, that put together on Yeredeya. He did a terrible job, and I would not suggest buying that one. But this one, the Piskei Tshuvos, that one is called Psokim Utshuvos. It looks the same thing, but it's Psokim Utshuvos, it's on Yeredeya. But this one is very, very, very good. So he says like this, he says over here, Kvar Hevi HaMishnah Berurah Estivriach Sam Sofer B'Tshuvoso. The Mishnah Berurah brings the Sam Sofer, Shelo Yitiru Nispala B'Tzimur B'Shor L'Shoynes Ele Ba'Kroi. Only if once in a blue moon it can happen. Once it becomes kavua English, it can be a terrible thing, and it's also 100%. Many other daily Yisrael can strengthen this opinion of the Sam Sofer. And with Frat B'Deiros HaAchreinim Ekiv HaMischatshim L'Minayim. So basically what he's saying is today, because of the reform that they changed everything around, once a person might start davening in English, so we're looking for more and more English stuff, and then Chas v'Sholom we can fall into reform Sidurim and reform things, and that can completely throw him off. So that's why it's a big problem not to do so. He says, so this was still a tzibur, that the whole min should daven in English, which there's a source for that. But he says even a yochid, you should not say, even though Shulchan Aruch says it's okay, the Shpaiskim say not to daven in English. There are specific certain words in Shemona Esrei that we do not know how to translate them properly. There are many secrets and many deep inyanim that are in the words of Torah that we have now, as the Nevi'im established. That's because even though seemingly it's more practical to understand what you're saying, but you want to really connect to Hashem in the right kind of way, so then you have to say the words Lashon Kodesh. And even Amei artists that don't understand the language should do the same thing. And he says, you want to understand. So the first pasuk of Kriya Shema and the first bracha of Shemona Esrei, you should make sure to learn those what that means in Hebrew, and this way you'll be able to understand what it means. He continues that today, he says, Baruch Hashem, there are many people becoming religious, and many of them do not know how to read Hebrew at all. So but those that are printing Siddur in English is a very good thing. However, you make sure that you should never print the Siddur only in English. You should also always have Lashon HaKodesh together with it. And you can have a transliteration. Everyone knows what that means. Yeah, there's translation and transliteration is that you write B-O-R-U-C-H, Baruch, in those words. So make sure to have that. You should be able to read the words properly. So B'shas Hatchak, once in a blue moon, a person can daven in English as well. But basically, this is the rule that the Poskim say. In addition, there's a letter of the Rebbe also. In the past, there was a minhag by Chassidim that a chassid that really davened, so in the middle of davening, he would translate the words to the Yiddish. After Baruch Shalom, he would say in Yiddish to himself the words that he said. So I forget, I think it was a question about I forget, there's a certain great chassid that used to do that, and they asked him, how you talking? Or how you speaking Yiddish in the middle of davening? So he said, my nefesh abamis versteht besser. My Torah understands better when I speak in my language. That's what I'm allowed. However, there's a letter of the Rebbe to a chassid that wanted to do the same thing. And the Rebbe said no. Today the Rebbe doesn't allow those things. In Pashtus, why not? Because today our matzav is different and our davening is not as pure, not as intense as it was in the past. So today, we're just saying those words without understanding. So if you're saying the words of davening properly without understanding, so then very good. You're saying the words of davening, so even if you don't understand it so much, you're davening properly. But if you're saying the words in English and you won't really focus so much, then it's nishta. And I know there are some Chabad houses where people that can do daven in English, and it's very funny to see a person rattling off words in English like we daven without kavanah. It's just like we daven. We all know, most of our davening, unfortunately, we don't have enough kavanah. So here, but you would imagine if you say in English, the Baruch is assuming that we so much practical, and I'll have kavanah. But I've seen B'Pel Mamish now. I've seen a guy read in English, and he's talking in English just like we talk to him, and it's obvious that he doesn't know what he's saying. I mean, if he'll start to think, he'll understand. But he's just saying it. I'm sure in the beginning when he started saying, he was inspired, and he had meant to be words. But now over time, the problem is not the language. The problem is the taking to davening seriously and working on yourself in your davening. Next question: is it okay to wear a T-shirt while playing sports? Is it better to wear a white shirt? There was a big chassid, his name was Reb Shoel Brook. Reb Shoel Brook, if he would walk into the yeshiva right now, he would slap up every single bacher. Because everyone here is wearing button-down shirts. And he said button-down shirts is very modern. Everybody has to wear only white, what we call undershirts. But in his time, that was the right way, the Siddish way of dressing. And the white button-down shirts with the collars, especially with the collars. The collars were treif mamish. You have a collar, you crazy? I talking. This year, a bacher yeshiva came without a collar. It's a new kind button. Baruch Hashem. Hashem will be happy. No collars in it. It's going back to the old style. The shirt itself, when it comes to the cloud, uniforms and clothes and all these things, who decides what's considered Siddish and what's not? Again, in those times, if you look in pictures of 770, in the Bachar until Tafshin and Zion, everybody wore colored shirts all the time. Forget it, it was buttoned down, but it was all colored shirts. That was a Seder all the time. Tafshin and Zion, the Lubavitcher yeshivas in the world got together, just like by Zoom they made a meeting together. So they made a meeting then also, and they decided from now on, I think that Rabbi Hertz in London prides himself on being the first one to institute it, that he said from now on, only white shirts. When I was a Bach in Yeshiva and I was younger, we all had blue shirts. That's what everyone wore. The Chiddush guys had white shirts the whole time. But everyone else, and many guys didn't see a problem. What's the difference? And then Rabbi Ephraim Pekarsky, who was the ultimate mashgiach of the Torah, so he famously said that after they made the new rule, they have to have white shirts. He said, I never knew how many types of white shirts you can have. With them all, black buttons, red buttons, one shirt, one packet, two packets, no packets. It's for now. With them all the styles. So what's Siddish? If I have two packets on my shirt, is that okay? If I have red buttons and if I have the threads around on the sides. So all these things, obviously, can't be measured clearly. What's considered okay, what's not okay. The major question when it comes to T-shirts and white shirts, the major question is, why do you not want to wear the shirt that everyone is wearing? Everyone is wearing now, in the Shel Brooks times, the white shirt without the collar. Why do you want to have the collar? Today, when everyone's wearing the white shirt, why do you want to have the T-shirt? That is the main question to ask. And if the answer is you want to have the T-shirt because you feel more free, you feel you more blend in, and you feel like you're less restricted, that's a problem. Because you want to feel less restricted, you're taking off the yoke. Your yoke of you're on Holo, whoever made these rules for you, which represents the Hebishter in a way. So in other words, you're trying to shrug off Hashem Chman Islam. That's a terrible thing. However, if the only reason why you want to wear the T-shirt is partially because when you sweat and it's uncomfortable, and you come back to the Zal afterwards, you don't want the same shirt, and you could play better, and it's the tightness of something Bacham say. In that case, in Gesund I don't see a problem at all in wearing the T-shirt. It's not. It depends what your kavana. What do you really? Why are you doing it? So versteht sich that's ideal. Because some analysts will make a rule. They'll say, yeah, everyone's going to say, no, I only want it because it's more comfortable to play. But we know that the Bacher really wants it more than that. If you only want it to play, why do you put it on 2 hours before and leave it on 2 hours later? So he says, you do want to have the T-shirt. It's not just because of the play. So Ebazoisa and Hummus will sometimes make a rule. No, even by the sports, you have to wear white shirts because look, they can't get involved and have each bacher answering and being honest about what he said. So the Mela, that's why someone also makes such a rule, because you can't get to it. But ideally, I don't think there's for bacher. Honestly, Daka doesn't care at all about the t-shirt. And it's not the t-shirt. He doesn't care about blending in with the world and being more free and less restricted. It's partial for more comfortable. He can play better that way, and he doesn't schwitz that so much. And his white shirt, as far as I understand, is a little baya. Canal. This is all entertainment. All right, the next bacher started writing a question. He couldn't fit this into the box, and this question is, what's the bracha on the kind bars? So the bracha is, the questions are all granola bars, and specifically for kind bars. So you should know that in YU, the YU is the Yeshiva University. So there's very many different levels of bacher over there. So bachim that are completely non-religious, to bachim that are ultra-religious. Just they're under the modern Orthodox umbrella, but they're still very, some chavra are really frum over there. Actually, in the booklet that we have now on Chol Yisrael, so we'll learn in the back of the Kovis over there, the Rosh Yeshiva of the YU is Rav Hershel Schachter, and he's a tremendous Talmud Chacham. He's modern Orthodox, he trims his beard, but he does not drink milk or any milchiks at all. According to him, all milchiks is treif today, and has a whole tshuva in the back. You want to go read it, you'll see. It's in his handwriting. It's a whole long tshuva by proving that all milchiks today is treif, and it's a very convincing argument. And the only answer why I know that it's okay is because the Rebbe drank milk. That's my only response. But halachically, I don't have a good, proper answer for him. My God, I heard someone gave me an answer according to the Rogachover to try for answers, but it's not pshat. But pastors, so he's YU and he's more machmir. So in YU, what's the barometer? What's considered a more frum bacher? The more frum you are, is they're considered. How do you consider? Like some bachim, what's chiddush if he plays with his button-down shirt? If a t-shirt is not chiddush, right? So in YU, how do you consider frum? They don't use the term chiddush. If you eat granola bars, you're not chiddush. Or frum, whatever the two they use. If you don't eat granola bars, that's chiddush. Because by then they know it's a major shaila. It is a very big question. So therefore, let's just been a suffix. They don't eat granola. The frum or chavre don't eat granola bars at all. That's the way to measure a frum extra chiddush abach. What's the whole problem? Where does the confusion come from? The confusion comes from, there's two major issues. Most granola bars are made out of oats, and not oats, most. All granola is oats. Granola means rolled oats. So this over here, the ingredients of this granola bars, which is very important, it's good to read ingredients, a lot of fun. Oats, cane sugar, tapioca. Anybody? Syrup? Huh? Tapioca. Sounds like a genre of music, no? Canola oil, brown rice, millet, honey, coconut, buckwheat, brown rice, flour, amaranth. Amaranth. Oat flour, sea salt, quinoa. Brown rice, syrup, vitamin E. To maintain freshness. So this is the ingredients over here. So from here there are two things that are chameshes minei dagan. The chameshes minei dagan, are chitim soira shebershul, kusmin and chitim soira shifra. In English, wheat, barley, rice, spelt, and oats. So it's chameshes minei dagan. The Torah says, the Shulchan Aruch says, when you eat any of the chameshes minei dagan, if it's made in such a special way, you have to make a breder minei bezaynis. So there's oats and there's oat flour. Both of them over here.
You said wheat?
So, what?
You said wheat inside.
I said buckwheat. Buckwheat is a short kasher. It's not, it doesn't deserve to be a choshen minei dagan. Ein mevorchim breder minei bezaynis ala dagan. Says the Alter Rebbe, Lo la'achar ben gimel, elok she'oichle b'derech achilasi. When do you make a mezaynis? On the chameshes minei dagan, when you eat it the way it's meant to be eaten. Kegoyin. Tavshil anasa mikemach, a cooked dish. Best example is knedlach. Knedlach is flour mixed into water and it's cooked in the soup. Oi, other example, dogon atzmai shenechlech l'shnayim of the gimel v'yeser, the actual grain itself. You take a kernel of wheat, of barley v'chulu, or binyanenu oats, and it's divided into 2 or 3 parts. V'nisbashel b'mayim oi b'shor mashkim, and it was cooked in water or other liquids. Yad Shochadam. Yad Shochadam, everybody knows, I hope. Yeah, Yad Shochadam. Yeah, sure, you know Yad Shochadam? Hershel, no? Yad Shochadam? Chol of Tal, Damai. These are the 7 mashkim. The pashtus, any of the 7 mashkim that are mixed in together with this pieces of the grain, and this bashel was cooked together. which is basically what we call oatmeal or farina, same thing. And yeah, it wasn't actually divided. The outer shell of the kernel was removed. And that's the way you cook it. You're going to whatever the case, it's made in cooked some kind of way. Says now the Rebbe right, weiter. If the kernel is complete, the outer shell was not removed, was not crushed. In that case, so if you eat actual kernels that were not cooked, so he says, the confusion is, not many confusions, but first of all he says that mezonos is, the kernel is cracked up into parts, or in flour, and it was cooked. And later he says that once hadoma, when it was not cooked, it's as is. But pashtus mashma, even if it's cracked into pieces, but it was not cooked, it was baked or popped, what they call, it remains hadom. So the question over here is there's flour over here. These are kind bars. We also have the classical bars, are the Nature Valley bars. They're also granola. Over there, they don't have flour, at least in the flavor that I looked at. So there's no flour. Is there any mashkin over here? Who remembers what I read before? Which mashkin do we see?
Water. Oil. Oil.
Honey. Very good. Honey. There's honey in here. Honey shiva mashkin. So it's together with the honey, and there's flour here as well. So the is mezonos. The only question is, how do they make this? Do they actually cook it? Do they bake it? Or is it only cold made? Do they just mix all the ingredients? For example, Rice Krispie treats. Someone make Rice Krispie treats over here? Rice Krispie treats. So you have to melt the margarine and the marshmallows, and then you take the Rice Krispies in a separate pan, and you mix them. You mix them under what's basically cold. You don't need. It's not cooking it together. You're only heating it up to have it liquidy. But once it's pressed together, you don't need it. There's no baking process involved. So the question over here is there any baking? Is it baking or is it cooking? If it's baking, then it has to be l'chayra adoma. And it's not cooking. It should be adoma. If it's considered cooking, it should be mezonos. That seems to be the answer to the question. So how is it done? So by the Nature Valley bars, I called it Nature Valley. I asked them, how do you do it? Told me it's a secret. We can't tell you. If it's a secret that he can't tell you, so that what remains in Eibazoi is Alter Rebbe says later. If something has a food that you don't know what the brach is, if it's a real suffix, call the person but everybody knows. You have a suffix, you make a shahakal. That's the rule. So the fi'aniyos daiti, you make a shahakal on granola bars because you don't know what the bracha is. So therefore, that's what you should be doing. There's only another. The shaila would be that the two options over here are hadam or mezonos. So there's a tzemach tzedek. I didn't learn it inside, but I have a sefer here that he quotes a tzemach tzedek that says that we know that if you had made a ha'etz, you made a hadam on an apple, right? The apple has to be ha'etz. If by mistake you made a better pri hadam on an apple, we all know that halacha is your yaitz. Why? Because the apple comes from the ground. So on derech zeh, again, I didn't see tzemach tzedek inside, but the person that I saw quoted that the tzemach tzedek says if you make a hadam on mezonos, you also yaitz, because mezonos is also hadam, the same thing. So it's better to say a specific bracha. So better instead of making a shahakal, better make a hadam because it's relates either way. But that's a machzedek. I don't know if he passes the ma'isa mamish. So the fi'aniyos daiti, if you cannot find out, is l'chayder should be shahakal because it's a real suffix. You tried, and this time everybody knows that you're not supposed to randomly make shahakal if you don't know. Huh?
You called up OU?
The problem with OU is that they can't share the trade secrets. And to get through the whole U is very complicated. So speak the secretary, blah, 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 the person that's there. There's a rumor going around a while ago that there's a shliach in Ann Arbor, Michigan, that he's the one that's governor for Nature Valley. So I hear rumors all the time about different things that I always know. And I always find out who's the source. And I call up the source, and 99% of the time, it's not sure what they said. I call this guy, I'm not the shliach. One time, Israel made a special run, and I went and I saw over there how they did it. But Beifin Klali, he doesn't know what he's talking about, how it works, and he's to tell you, he doesn't know. So mainly you could try to call OU, but then they can't tell you the secret. They can tell you the halachas, but they're not according to the Alter Rebbe. So it could be shakal. However, I spoke to Rabbi Chanukah from the OK, and he told me that he understands that there is cooking process involved. He said something called molasses. What's the molasses? Huh? What's molasses? Huh? Sugar liquid. And he says that liquid is not considered liquid, and if so, it's not very hot, then there is a cooking element involved. So Mamela, he said it should be mezonos. But if it's taka adoma, then it comes a second big question. The second big question is, I'm overtime, I'm sorry. I'll finish off. The second big question is, the Rebbe says that if you make Adama, the bracha achrein is better than the Nefashis Rabbis. However, the Mishtabkim is the Mevorach Acher of better Nefashis Rabbis, Amen Gimel. There's a machlekes, and some say that even though you made Adama, if it's not Adama, the bracha achrein is not. So you have granola cereal. Granola cereal is for sure Adama. It's pieces of grain.